Welcome back to our channel. We hope you enjoy the story. Let's dive in. I refilled the drinks for our friends, the sound of ice clinking against the glasses providing a cheerful contrast to the laughter that filled our living room. Over the years, game nights at our house had become a tradition, a way to relax and reconnect with our closest friends. "All right, who's up for Never Have I Ever?" I asked, settling back onto the couch next to Vanessa, my wife of 10 years. She smiled at me, her dark hair cascading in soft waves around her face. She looked stunning as always, but there was something in her eyes I couldn't quite understand. "Oh, this should be fun," Mark chuckled, rubbing his hands together in anticipation. My oldest friend hadn't changed much since our school days, still quick with a joke and always ready for a good time. His wife, Rachel, rolled her eyes fondly, clearly used to his antics by now. "Just remember, what happens on game night stays on game night," Julia added with a playful wink. She worked with Vanessa in marketing and had become a regular at our gatherings over the last year. Her boyfriend Daniel nodded in agreement, looking as laid back as ever. "I'll start." Rachel volunteered. Never have I ever gone skinny dipping. There were groans and laughter as a few people took sips of their drinks. I noticed Vanessa take before she took a small sip herself, which surprised me. She'd never mentioned skinny dipping before. The game went on, with questions ranging from silly to a little risk. I felt myself relax, enjoying the friendly atmosphere and the good drinks. When it was Vanessa's turn, she picked a card from the stack in the center of the coffee table. Her eyes widened slightly as she read it, and I felt a small pang of unease. "Never have I ever," she paused, her voice catching a little. "Never have I ever cheated on my spouse." The room fell silent for a moment. I glanced around, expecting to see everyone's glasses untouched. To my shock, Vanessa lifted her drink and took a long sip. Time seemed to slow down. I stared at her, unable to process what I was witnessing. This had to be some kind of joke, right? A misunderstanding? "Whoa," plot twist, Mark joked, but his attempt at humor fell flat in the suddenly tense atmosphere. I forced a laugh, trying to play along. "Very funny, babe. You really had us going for a second." Vanessa didn't meet my gaze. "Yeah, just a joke," she mumbled, her face flushed, and she avoided looking at anyone. Julia cleared her throat. "Maybe we should play something else." The rest of the night passed in a blur. I went through the motions of being a good host, but my mind was racing. Every time I glanced at Vanessa, my thoughts were consumed by questions. Was it just a joke, or was there something she wasn't telling me? As our friends said their goodbyes, I noticed Mark giving me a concerned look. He pulled me aside while Vanessa was seeing Julia and Daniel out. "You all right, man?" he asked quietly. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Mark gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Call me if you need anything, okay?" After everyone had left, Vanessa and I cleaned up in silence. The light-hearted mood from earlier in the evening had vanished, replaced by a thick tension. "We should go to bed," Vanessa finally said, her voice strained. "It's late," I nodded, following her upstairs. As we got ready for bed, moving through our usual routines, I searched for the words to confront her, but each time I opened my mouth, I stopped. What if I was blowing this out of proportion? What if it really was just a dumb joke? We climbed into bed, the silence between us growing wider like a chasm. Vanessa turned away, curling up on her side of the bed. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts swirling. One thing was clear: something had shifted tonight, and as much as I wanted to pretend it hadn't, I couldn't ignore it. The seed of doubt had been planted, and I had a sinking feeling it would only grow. The smell of coffee woke me from a restless sleep. For a moment I was disoriented, but then the events of the previous night flooded back, and a knot formed in my stomach. I got up, threw on a shirt and some sweats, and headed downstairs. Vanessa was already in the kitchen, her back to me as she poured a cup of coffee. "Morning," I said, my voice still rough from sleep. She jumped a little and turned to face me. "Oh, hey, I didn't hear you come down." Her smile looked forced, not quite reaching her eyes. "Want some coffee?" I nodded, watching her carefully as she poured me a cup. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, suggesting she'd slept as poorly as I had. "Thanks," I murmured as she handed me the mug. Our fingers brushed and I felt her tense at the contact. We stood there for a moment, the silence stretching between us. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. "We need to talk about last night," I said firmly. Vanessa's shoulders slumped. "Nate, it was just a stupid game. I was drunk. I wasn't thinking clearly." "So you're saying you've never cheated on me?" I pressed, needing to hear her say it. She hesitated, and my heart sank. "Of course not," she said, but her voice didn't sound convincing. I set my coffee down, suddenly feeling sick. Don't lie to me, Vanessa. Not now. I'm not lying, she snapped, her defensive tone only fueling my suspicions. God, Nate, why can't you just drop this? Because my wife basically admitted to cheating on me in front of all our friends, I shot back, my anger rising. What am I supposed to think? Vanessa's face crumpled. It was a mistake, okay? It didn't mean anything. It was just a moment of weakness. The room seemed to spin around me. So you did cheat. It was one time, she said quickly. It won't happen again, I swear. Can't we just forget about it and move on? I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. Forget about it. Are you serious? What do you want me to say? Nate, Vanessa's voice grew louder with frustration. I made a mistake. I'm sorry. What more do you want? I want the truth, I said, my voice cold. When? With who? Vanessa shook her head. It doesn't matter. It's over. It won't happen again. It matters to me, I insisted. I deserve to know. We went back and forth, the argument escalating. Vanessa switched between anger and begging for forgiveness, but no matter how hard I pushed, she wouldn't give me any details. Finally, exhausted and disgusted, I grabbed my keys. I need some air, I muttered, heading for the door. Where are you going? Vanessa called after me, her voice filled with panic. Out, I responded tersely, slamming the door behind me. I drove aimlessly for a while, trying to clear my mind. How had we ended up here? 10 years of marriage, and I thought I knew her. Now, she felt like a stranger to me. Eventually, I found myself parked outside Mark and Rachel's house. Mark opened the door, taking one look at my face before ushering me inside. Want to talk about it? He asked, handing me a beer. I sank onto their couch. She cheated on me, I said flatly. Mark's eyes widened. Damn, man, as I recounted the morning's confrontation, Mark listened without interrupting, his expression growing more serious. What are you going to do? He asked when I finished. I shook my head. I don't know. I can't just act like nothing happened, but it's been Vanessa. We've been together for so long. I can't imagine my life without her. Mark leaned forward, his face solemn. Look, Nate, you're my best friend, so I'm going to be honest with you. Don't let her off the hook for this. You deserve better. You think I should leave her? I asked, taken aback by his bluntness. I think you need to figure out if you can trust her again, Mark replied. And if you can't, then maybe it's better to move on. I nodded slowly, turning his words over in my mind. Thanks, man. I appreciate the advice. Anytime, Mark said, clapping me on the shoulder. Rachel and I are here for you, no matter what you decide. I stayed a little longer, grateful for the distraction, but eventually I knew I had to go home and face reality. When I walked through the door, Vanessa was waiting for me, her eyes red and swollen, as if she'd been crying. I thought you weren't coming back, she said softly. I live here, don't I replied, my tone harsher than I intended. Vanessa winced. Nate, please, can we talk about this? She pleaded. I sighed, feeling exhausted. What's there to talk about? You cheated. You broke my trust. I don't know where we go from here. I love you, she said desperately. It was a mistake. I swear it won't happen again. Please, just give me another chance. I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman I had loved for over a decade, the person I had built my life with, and for the first time I questioned if I had ever truly known her. I need time, I said finally. I can't just forgive you overnight, Vanessa. I need to figure out what I want. She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Okay, take all the time you need. I'll be here when you're ready to talk. I headed upstairs, needing space. As I lay in the bed we'd shared for years, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had changed, and I had no idea what the future held for us. Days turned into weeks, and we settled into an uneasy routine. Vanessa and I coexisted in the same house, but the closeness we once had was gone. She made efforts to reconnect, cooking my favorite meals, suggesting date nights, but I couldn't bring myself to open up. The doubt gnawed at me constantly, poisoning every interaction. I began noticing things I had overlooked before: how often her phone buzzed with notifications, the late nights at the office that seemed to be happening more frequently, the way she guarded her phone, always keeping it close. One evening I was sitting in the living room when Vanessa came home, looking flustered, her cheeks flushed. Hey, she said breathlessly. Sorry I'm late. Got caught up at work. I nodded, not bothering to respond. She hesitated, then went upstairs. I heard the shower start running a few minutes later. I was sitting there, staring into space, when I heard a notification sound. Vanessa had left her phone on the coffee table, forgotten in her rush to shower. For a moment I wrestled with my conscience. This was an invasion of privacy, a betrayal of trust. But hadn't she already betrayed me? Before I could stop myself, I picked up the phone. To my surprise, it wasn't locked, another red flag. Vanessa was usually meticulous about phone security. I opened her messages, my heart pounding, and there it was, plain as day, a conversation with someone named Austin Miller. As I scrolled through, my stomach turned. "Can't wait to see you later," one message read. Same place as last time Vanessa had replied. "I'll make up an excuse about working late." There were flirtatious comments, inside jokes, plans for secret meetings. It was all there, laid bare. I heard the shower stop and quickly put the phone back where I had found it, my mind reeling. Vanessa came downstairs a few minutes later, wrapped in her robe. "I'm starving," she said, oblivious. "Want to order in?" I looked at her, really looked at her, the woman I had trusted, the person I had built my life with. And in that moment, something inside me hardened. "Actually," I said, my voice calm despite the storm inside me, "we need to talk." Vanessa froze, sensing the shift in my tone. "Okay," she said cautiously. "What about?" "About Austin Miller," I replied, watching her face closely. The color drained from her cheeks. "What? What are you talking about?" "Don't," I snapped, my control slipping. "Don't you dare lie to me again. I saw the messages, Vanessa, I know everything." She reached for her phone, but I was faster. Looking for this, I asked, holding it up. "Go ahead, unlock it. Let's read them together, shall we?" "You went through my phone," Vanessa's voice rose in indignation. "How could you invade my privacy like that?" I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "That's rich, coming from you. How long has this been going on, Vanessa? Weeks? Months?" She crumpled onto the couch. "It's not what you think," she whispered. "Really? Because I think my wife has been sneaking around with her co-worker behind my back. Am I wrong?" Vanessa's silence was all the confirmation I needed. A cold fury rose inside me, stronger than anything I had ever felt before. "I want you out," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "Pack your things and get out of my house." "Nate, please," Vanessa begged, tears streaming down her face. "We can fix this. I'll end it with Austin, I promise. Just give me another chance." I shook my head, unmoved. "You had your chance. You threw away 10 years of marriage for what? Some fling with a co-worker? I hope it was worth it." "Where am I supposed to go?" she asked, her voice small. "I don't care," I responded icily. "Call your lover. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to take you." And I watched with detachment as Vanessa hurriedly threw her belongings into a bag, her hands shaking and tears streaming down her face. As she reached the door, she paused, turning to me one last time. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted to hurt you." I met her eyes, making sure she could fully see the depth of my anger and pain. "Get out," I said simply. As the door shut behind her, I collapsed onto the couch, burying my head in my hands. The weight of what had just happened hit me like a tidal wave. My marriage was over. The life I had built, the future I had envisioned, gone in an instant. But as I sat in the suddenly too big, too quiet house, a new sense of determination took root. Vanessa had betrayed me, humiliated me, and there was no way I was going to let her walk away unscathed. I grabbed my phone and dialed a familiar number. "Mark, it's me. Listen, I need your help with something." As I outlined my plan to my oldest friend, a dark sense of satisfaction settled within me. Vanessa and Austin thought they could get away with their affair, but they had no idea what was coming. I was going to make sure they paid for every lie, every betrayal. I sat at my computer, fingers hovering over the keyboard, staring at the screenshots of Vanessa's messages with Austin. The undeniable evidence of their affair was right in front of me. My heart raced as I logged into her social media accounts. "Time to face the consequences, Vanessa," I muttered, uploading the screenshots and tagging friends, family, and colleagues. A grim satisfaction filled me as I watched it unfold. Let everyone see the truth about who she really was. My phone started ringing almost immediately. I ignored it, watching as notifications flooded in. Comments of shock and disgust quickly piled up. "Nate, what the hell's going on?" Mark's voice came through when I finally answered. "Just telling it like it is," I replied, my voice calm. "She made her bed, now she can lie in it." Another call came through Vanessa. I declined it, a cold smile spreading across my face. "She's trying to call me," I told Mark. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "Nothing. Let her panic." My phone buzzed continuously with messages and missed calls. I turned it off, relishing the silence that followed. Hours passed, and I packed methodically, knowing she would come home sooner or later. Sure enough, I heard her car screech into the driveway, followed by the sound of the front door being flung open. "Nate, What have you done? Vanessa's voice was frantic as I emerged from the bedroom, suitcase in hand. She stood there, her eyes wild and hair disheveled. Oh, good, you're home, I said calmly. I was worried I'd miss you. Miss me? Nate, what is going on? Why would you post those messages? I raised an eyebrow. I thought everyone deserved to know the truth. Isn't honesty important in a relationship? You've ruined everything, she shouted, her voice breaking. No, Vanessa, I replied coldly. You ruined everything the moment you chose to cheat. She lunged toward me, tears streaming down her face. Please, we can fix this. I'll do anything. I stepped back. Out of her reach. There's nothing left to fix. We're done. You can't just walk away, she cried, blocking my path. Watch me. As I moved toward the door, Vanessa stepped in front of me, her voice cracking. I'm sorry, okay? I made a mistake. Please don't do this. I laughed bitterly. A mistake? A mistake is forgetting an appointment. You had an affair, Vanessa. You lied to my face for months. It didn't mean anything, she pleaded. Austin was just. Don't, I cut her off sharply. I don't want to hear his name. Fine, but please, can we just talk about this, she begged. You're throwing away 10 years of marriage. I met her gaze, my eyes cold. No, Vanessa, you threw it away. I'm just taking out the trash. Vanessa recoiled as if I had struck her. How can you be so heartless? Heartless, I replied, my voice rising. You want to talk about heartless? Heartless is betraying someone who loved and trusted you. Heartless is making a fool out of your husband. Don't lecture me on cruelty. She sobbed, her voice desperate. What do you want from me? I said, I'm sorry. I want you to live with the consequences of your actions, I replied coldly. I want everyone to see who you really are. And what about you? Vanessa shot back. Do you really think people are going to side with you after what you've done? You've humiliated me. I shrugged. Maybe, but at least I can look at myself in the mirror. This isn't you. Nate, she said, her voice trembling. You're not this vindictive. You're right, I said, my voice colder than ever. The old Nate wouldn't have done this. But the old Nate died the moment he saw those messages. I pushed past her, heading for the door. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. Don't leave, she begged. Please. For a moment I hesitated, but then I remembered the lies, the betrayal, and the casual way she had planned her meetings with Austin. Goodbye, Vanessa, I said, shaking off her grip. I walked out, ignoring her sobs behind me. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from Mark. You okay? Need a place to crash, he asked. I'm good. Thanks, man, I replied quickly as I navigated the streets, now feeling unfamiliar. A weight lifted from my chest. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in weeks I felt like I could breathe again. The law office of Lila Chong was sleek and imposing, much like the woman herself. She regarded me coolly over steepled fingers. So, Mr. Richards, you want a divorce? She asked. Yes, I replied firmly. And I want to make sure I come out on top. A predatory smile spread across her face. Well, you've come to the right place. Tell me everything. I laid out the entire sordid story, the affair, the public exposure, Vanessa's attempts to reconcile. Lila listened intently, occasionally making notes. You've given me a lot to work with, she said when I finished. The infidelity alone puts us in a strong position. And if there's any misuse of company resources tied to their affair, we can make things very difficult for her. Good, I said. She deserves it. Lila leaned forward. Mr. Richards, I have to warn you, divorce can get very messy, especially when emotions are running high. I met her gaze steadily. I want her to pay for what she did. All right then, she said. Let's get to work. Over the next few weeks, Lila lived up to her reputation as a ruthless attorney. She left no stone unturned, digging into every detail of Vanessa's affair. Meanwhile, Vanessa vacillated between begging for forgiveness and lashing out in anger. Her calls and texts were relentless. Nate, please, can we talk? Her latest voicemail begged. I know I messed up, but I love you. We can work through this. I deleted the message without responding, letting her stew in her guilt. As we prepared for another meeting with Lila, my phone rang from an unknown number. Hello, is this Nathaniel Richards? A woman's voice asked. Yes, who is this? I replied. My name is Kelly Miller. I was Austin's wife. I felt my breath catch. Oh, I see. I just wanted to thank you, Kelly said softly, for exposing the affair. I had my suspicions, but I'm sorry you had to find out that way. Surprised by the sincerity in my voice, I responded, "Don't be. You deserve to know the truth." She paused for a moment before continuing. "How are you holding up?" I let out a humorless laugh. "As well as can be expected. You." "Some days are better than others," she admitted. "Listen, I know this is strange, but would you like to grab coffee sometime? It might help to talk to someone who understands." I hesitated, but then agreed. Sure, why not? Things can't get any weirder. We met the next day at a quiet cafe. Kelly was attractive in a subtle way, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. So she said as we sat down, "Here we are, the Betrayed Spouses Club." I chuckled despite myself. Not exactly the club I expected to join. "Me neither," Kelly replied as she stirred her coffee absent-mindedly. "Can I ask how you found out?" I explained the fateful game night and how everything had slowly unraveled. Kelly nodded, listening closely. "It's the little things. Isn't it?" she mused. "The subtle changes you can't quite pinpoint." "Exactly," I agreed. "I feel like such an idiot for not noticing sooner." Kelly reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Don't blame yourself. They're the ones who should feel ashamed, not us." I nodded, grateful for her empathy. "How about you? How did you find out?" "Your post!" "Actually," she said, her voice steady. "It was a real wake-up call." I winced. "I'm sorry about that. I wasn't thinking clearly." "Don't be sorry," Kelly insisted. "I'm glad I know, even though it hurts. The truth is better than living a lie." We spent hours talking, sharing our stories and bonding over the shared pain of betrayal. As we parted ways, I felt strangely lighter. "We should do this again," Kelly suggested. "It's nice to talk to someone who really gets it." I agreed, surprised at how much I was looking forward to seeing her again. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal meetings and negotiations. Vanessa fought tooth and nail, but Lila was ruthless. "We've got her cornered," Lila said during one of our strategy meetings. "She's starting to realize just how much she stands to lose." Sure enough, Vanessa's tone shifted during her next attempt to contact me. "Nate, please," she pleaded over the phone. "This has gone too far. Can't we just sit down and talk like adults?" "There's nothing to talk about," I replied coldly. "You made your decision. Now you live with it." "You're being unreasonable," she protested. "I made a mistake and I've apologized. What more do you want from me?" I laughed bitterly. "What do I want? I want the last few months of my life back. I want to unsee those messages. I want to go back to a time when I believed my wife actually loved me." "I do love you," Vanessa cried. "It was just a meaningless fling. It didn't mean anything." "If it didn't mean anything, then why do it?" I shot back. "Why risk everything we built?" Her silence was deafening. "That's what I thought," I said quietly. "Goodbye, Vanessa." As I hung up, a sense of finality washed over me. There was no turning back now. All that remained was to see this through to the end. I stared at my computer screen, finger hovering over the send button. The email I had drafted to Vanessa and Austin's company HR department was filled with evidence expense reports, dates that coincided with their affair, and the misuse of company resources. "You sure you want to do this?" Mark's voice came through on speakerphone. I took a deep breath. "Absolutely. It's a pretty drastic move, man." "I know, but they deserve it. They thought they could get away with using the company to facilitate their affair. Time to face the consequences." There was a pause. And then Mark sighed. "All right, I've got your back." "Thanks, man." "I appreciate it." I hit send, watching as the email disappeared into cyberspace. It felt like lighting a fuse. Now, all I had to do was wait for the explosion. It didn't take long. Within hours, my phone was flooded with notifications. Vanessa's panicked voice filled my voicemail. "Nate, what have you done?" "The company is launching an investigation. They're talking about firing us. Please call me back. We need to discuss this." I deleted the message without responding, letting her stew. A text from Kelly popped up next. "Heard about the investigation. How are you holding up?" I smiled, touched by her concern. "I'm okay. It had to be done. Want to grab dinner? It might help to talk." I hesitated, then agreed. "Sure, why not?" We met at a quiet Italian restaurant. Kelly looked beautiful in a simple black dress, her smile warm as she greeted me. "So," she said as we settled in, "you've been busy." I shrugged, trying to seem casual. "Just tying up loose ends." Kelly raised an eyebrow. "That's one way to put it. How does it feel?" I thought about it for a moment. Honestly, it feels good. like I'm finally taking back control. She nodded in understanding. I get that. After feeling powerless for so long, it's nice to be the one in charge. Exactly. They thought they could just carry on like nothing happened. Well, not on my watch. Our food arrived and we fell into an easy conversation. Kelly was smart, funny, and had a dry wit that matched my own. For the first time in months, I found myself genuinely enjoying someone's company. As we were finishing up, my phone buzzed. It was Mark. "Hey, what's up?" I answered. "Dude, have you seen the news? It's all over social media." I frowned. "What is?" "Vanessa and Austin, they've been fired. The company issued a statement about ethical violations and misuse of resources. It's a bloodbath." "Good," I replied, my voice steady. "They made their bed, now they can lie in it." "You okay?" Mark asked, concern evident in his tone. "I'm fine," I assured him. "Better than fine, actually. I'm having dinner with Kelly." There was a pause. "Kelly?" "As in Austin's ex-wife Kelly. The very same," I confirmed. "Don't worry, we're just friends." Mark said skeptically. "Just be careful, all right? You're both in a vulnerable place right now." "I appreciate the concern, but I'm a grown man. I can handle it." We said our goodbyes and I turned back to Kelly. She watched me closely, her brow furrowed with curiosity. "Everything okay?" she asked. I nodded, a small smile forming on my lips. "Yeah, actually, things are great. Looks like justice is finally being served." Kelly's eyes widened as she pieced it together. "The investigation." "Yep, they've both been fired." She let out a low whistle. "Wow, that's intense." "Too much?" I asked, suddenly unsure of myself. Kelly shook her head firmly. "No, not at all. They brought this on themselves. I'm just impressed, really. You don't do things halfway, do you?" I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in a long time. Go big or go home, right? As we left the restaurant, Kelly surprised me by pulling me into a hug. "I'm glad you're doing okay," she whispered. "You deserve to be happy, Nate." I hugged her back, feeling the comfort of human contact. "Thanks, Kelly. You deserve happiness too." We went our separate ways, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between us. It wasn't romance yet, but there was potential. For the first time since this whole ordeal started, I felt like I had something to look forward to. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with another message from Vanessa. Without reading it, I deleted it, feeling a sense of closure. The chapter of my life with her was officially over, and it was time to begin writing a new one. The final divorce papers sat on my coffee table, a stark reminder of the end of my marriage. I stared at them, pen in hand, feeling a swirl of emotions I couldn't quite name. My phone buzzed. It was Mark. "Hey man, you doing okay?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. "Yeah, I guess. Just about to sign the papers. You want me to come over?" Moral support and all that. I considered it for a moment. "You know what? Yeah, that'd be good." "Thanks, Mark." "No problem. I'll bring some beer." True to his word, Mark arrived 20 minutes later with a six-pack in hand. He whistled as he glanced at the papers. "So this is it, huh? End of an era." I nodded, taking a beer from him. "Yep, 10 years of marriage, reduced to a stack of legal documents." Mark settled onto the couch beside me. I took a long drink before replying. Honestly, relieved. It's been a long, ugly process, but it's finally over. "No regrets?" he asked. I shook my head firmly. None. Vanessa made her choices, and now she has to live with them. Mark raised his bottle in a mock toast. To new beginnings. We clinked our bottles together, and for the first time in a while I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I picked up the pen and signed the papers with a flourish. "There," I said, sitting back. "It's done." Mark clapped me on the shoulder. "You did the right thing, Nate. Now it's time to focus on you." "What's next?" I shrugged. "Not sure. Lila did a great job with the settlement, so I'm okay financially. I might take some time off and travel a bit." "That sounds like a plan. You deserve a break after all this." We spent the rest of the evening reminiscing about old times and speculating about the future. As Mark was heading out the door, he paused. "Hey, Rachel and I are having a small get-together next weekend. Nothing fancy, just a few friends. You should come." I hesitated. "I don't know, man. I'm not sure I'm ready for socializing just yet." Mark rolled his eyes. "Come on, it'll be good for you. Get out of this apartment, meet some new people. You might even have fun." I chuckled. All right, I'll be there." The following week passed in a blur of finalizing divorce details and tying up loose ends. Before I knew it, it was time for Mark's gathering. Standing outside their house, I felt oddly nervous. It had been a while since I'd been in a social setting that didn't involve lawyers or tense conversations with Vanessa. Rachel opened the door with a warm smile. "Nate, I'm so glad you could make it. Come on in." The house buzzed with conversation and laughter. I recognized a few faces from our old social circle, but there were many new ones as well. "Nate," Mark called out, waving me over. He was standing with a woman I didn't know. "There's someone I want you to meet. This is Emily. She just started at my firm." Emily turned to face me, revealing a kind smile and warm brown eyes. She extended her hand. "Nice to meet you, Nate. I've heard a lot about you." I shook her hand, shooting Mark a curious look. "All good things, I hope." Emily laughed. "Mostly. Though I have to admit, your reputation as a coding genius is a little intimidating." I relaxed a bit. Don't believe everything Mark says. He once crashed our entire system trying to install a screensaver. Mark groaned. "Are you ever going to let that go?" We all laughed and soon fell into easy conversation. Emily proved to be quick-witted and engaging. As the evening went on, I found myself genuinely enjoying her company. "So," she said as we grabbed drink refills, "Mark mentioned you're into photography." I nodded. "Yeah, amateur stuff mostly, but I've been doing it for years." Her eyes lit up. "That's awesome. I've always wanted to get into photography. Any tips for a total beginner?" We spent the next hour talking about cameras, composition, and lighting. Emily's excitement was contagious, and for the first time in months I found myself excited about photography again. As the party wound down, Emily turned to me with a smile. "This was fun. We should grab coffee sometime and continue our photography chat." I felt a flutter of something I hadn't experienced in a long time. Yeah, I'd like that. We exchanged numbers, and as I left the party, I couldn't wipe the grin off my face. The following weeks flew by. True to my word, I started traveling, bringing my camera along to capture new sights. But I also found myself looking forward to my coffee dates with Emily. We met regularly, our conversations spanning photography, books, and a shared love of obscure indie bands. It was refreshing to talk to someone who didn't know about my past with Vanessa, someone who just saw me as me. One afternoon, while we were walking through a local park, cameras in hand, Emily turned to me with a serious expression. "Nate, can I ask you something?" "Sure," I said, curious but cautious. She hesitated before continuing. "Mark told me a little about what happened with your ex-wife. I hope that's okay." I felt a flash of annoyance at Mark, but quickly let it go. "It's fine. What do you want to know?" Emily bit her lip. I wanted to make sure you're okay, that you're not, still hung up on her." I was surprised by the question, but even more surprised by how easily the answer came. "No, I'm not hung up on her. What happened with Vanessa hurt, sure, but it's in the past. I've moved on." Emily's face brightened. "Good. That's good to hear." We stood there for a moment, something unspoken passing between us. Then Emily grinned and raised her camera. "Race you to get the best shot of that fountain." I laughed, raising my own camera. "You're on." As we sprinted toward the fountain, competing for the best angle, I felt lighter than I had in years. The pain of Vanessa's betrayal was still there, a faint ache in the background, but it no longer controlled me. For the first time in a long while, I felt excited about what lay ahead, and that, I realized, was the best kind of revenge. Months had passed since the divorce was finalized, and life had settled into a new rhythm. Work was going great, my photography hobby had turned into a small side business, and my relationship with Emily was blossoming. One sunny afternoon, I was grabbing coffee at my usual spot when a familiar voice broke through my thoughts. "Nate, is that you?" I turned to see Julia, Vanessa's former colleague, looking hesitant and uncomfortable. "Julia," I greeted, keeping my tone neutral. "How are you?" She fiddled with her coffee cup. I'm okay. Listen, can we talk for a minute?" Curiosity got the best of me, so I nodded. "Sure, I've got some time." We sat at a small table in the corner, awkward silence stretching between us until Julia finally spoke up. "I wanted to apologize," she began, "for not telling you about Vanessa and Austin. I should have said something." I raised an eyebrow. "You knew?" She nodded, looking ashamed. "I suspected. There were rumors around the office, but I didn't want to believe them. Vanessa was my friend, and I didn't want to get involved." I took a sip of my coffee, contemplating my response. "I appreciate the apology, Julia, but why now?" "It's been months." Julia sighed. "I ran into Vanessa last week. She's not doing well. The scandal really hit her hard. She can't find work, and most of our old friends have cut ties with her. She asked about you. I felt a flicker of something, not quite sympathy, but not the satisfaction I would have expected either. What did you tell her? The truth that you seem to be doing well, that you've moved on. Julia hesitated. She wanted me to ask if you'd meet with her to talk. I shook my head firmly. No way. That chapter of my life is closed. Julia nodded, unsurprised. I thought you might say that. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing by moving on. Vanessa made her choices. We finished our coffees in silence before standing up to leave. Take care, Nate, Julia said. And I'm glad you're doing well. I watched her walk away, feeling a mix of emotions I couldn't quite identify. My phone buzzed with a message from Emily. Still on for dinner tonight? I've got a surprise for you, I smiled, already pushing the encounter with Julia out of my mind. Wouldn't miss it. Can't wait to see what you've got planned. Later that evening, as Emily and I enjoyed a home-cooked meal in her cozy apartment, she handed me a small wrapped gift. Remember how you said you wanted to get into street photography? She asked, her eyes twinkling. I nodded. Intrigued. Well, she said, pushing the package toward me, open it. I tore off the wrapping to reveal a sleek, compact camera perfect for capturing candid street shots. Emily, this is. Wow, thank you, I said, genuinely touched. She beamed. I thought we could explore the city together this weekend. There's an arts festival downtown that would be perfect for trying it out. As we planned our weekend adventure, I marveled at how much my life had changed. The pain of Vanessa's betrayal, once all-consuming, had faded into the background. My phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. Nate, it's Vanessa. Please, can we talk? I know I hurt you, but I'm trying to make amends. Just give me a chance to explain. I stared at the message for a moment before deleting it without responding. Some bridges once burned couldn't be rebuilt. Everything okay? Emily asked, noticing my distraction. I smiled, setting my phone aside. Yeah, everything's perfect. The sun was starting to set as Emily and I wandered through the lively arts festival, our new cameras capturing the vibrant energy around us. Oh, look at that, Emily exclaimed, pointing to a street performer juggling flaming batons. Get a shot of that. I laughed, raising my camera. On it, boss. As we moved through the crowd, I found myself appreciating how natural it felt to be here with Emily. There was an ease between us that I had forgotten could exist in a relationship. Hey, Emily said softly, touching my arm. You've got that look again. I raised an eyebrow. What look? She smiled. The one where you're overthinking something. What's on your mind? I hesitated but decided to be honest. I ran into someone the other day, an old friend of Vanessa's. Emily's expression grew serious. Oh? How did that go? We found a quiet bench away from the crowd, and I recounted my conversation with Julia. She told me Vanessa's struggling. I finished. Part of me feels like I should care, but you don't. Emily finished for me. I nodded, relieved that she understood. Is that terrible? Emily shook her head firmly. No, Nate, it's not terrible, it's human. Vanessa made her decisions. You're not responsible for the fallout. I exhaled, grateful. Thanks. I guess I needed to hear that. Emily squeezed my hand. That's what I'm here for. Now come on, I saw a booth selling those weird abstract paintings you like. As we wandered through the festival, I couldn't help but reflect on how far I'd come. The anger and bitterness I once felt after discovering Vanessa's affair had been replaced by a peace I hadn't thought possible. Later that night, as we reviewed our photos over a bottle of wine, Emily turned to me with a thoughtful look. You know, she began, you should do something with these photos, they're really good. I shrugged. They're just hobby shots. Emily shook her head. No, I'm serious. You've got real talent, Nate. Have you ever thought about starting a blog or something? Sharing your work? I considered it. I don't know. I wouldn't even know where to begin. Emily's eyes lit up. I could help. I've done some web design before. We could set up a portfolio site for you. Her excitement was contagious, and I found myself smiling. You know what? Let's do it. In the weeks that followed, Emily and I dedicated ourselves to building my photography blog. It became more than just a platform to display my photos. While working on the site, I realized I wanted to share the stories behind the pictures. What if I suggested one evening, as we were fine-tuning the layout, I wrote about my entire journey? Not just the photography, but also the divorce, the healing process, and rediscovering myself. Emily looked at me with surprise and admiration in her eyes. Nate, that's an amazing idea. But are you sure you're ready to share all of that? I nodded, feeling more certain than I had in a long time. Yeah, I think I am. If it can help even one person going through something similar, it'll be worth it. A month later, the blog went live. Initially, it was mostly friends and family who visited, but soon word began to spread. People resonated with my story, drawn to the raw honesty in my posts. Comments started pouring in. Thank you for sharing your story. I'm going through a divorce now, and your words give me hope. Your journey is inspiring. Nice to know there's light at the end of the tunnel. Your photos are beautiful, but it's your resilience that really stands out. As the blog grew, so did my confidence. I began hosting photography workshops, sharing techniques I'd picked up over the years. Emily was with me every step of the way, offering support and encouragement. One evening, as we were celebrating the blog's 6-month anniversary, Emily turned to me with a serious look. Nate, there's something I need to tell you. My heart skipped a beat. What is it? She took a deep breath. I've been offered a job. It's a great opportunity. But it's in New York. For a moment, my world tilted. Oh, wow, that's incredible, Em. Congratulations. She bit her lip. There's more. They said there might be an opening in their tech department if you're interested. I stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Are you asking me to move to New York with you? Emily nodded, her expression nervous. I know it's a big ask, and if you're not ready, I get it. But I love you, Nate, and I think we could build an amazing life together in New York. I sat there, thinking about everything that had happened over the past year, the heartache, the growth, the unexpected happiness I'd found with Emily. Finally, I smiled. Well, I've heard New York has some fantastic street photography opportunities. Emily's face lit up. Is that a yes? I pulled her close and kissed her deeply. That's a definite yes. As we began planning our move, I couldn't help but marvel at how life had turned around. A year ago, I thought my world had crumbled. Now, I was about to embark on a new chapter with a woman who understood and supported me in ways I never imagined possible. Opening my laptop, I began typing a new blog post. Life as a funny way of surprising you. What feels like an ending can turn out to be the start of something beautiful. This is where our story wraps up. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for your time. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to the channel, click on the video on your screen, and I'll see you there.